Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to our first Achievers Tech Talk of 2014. I guess just a few housekeeping items to take care of first. All right, so first of all, we've gained over 100 members for this group, for this talk, which is pretty awesome. Our member group count is over 1,100 members, we're zeroing in on one of the largest tech meetups in Toronto area, which is pretty fantastic, and we're going to get there soon enough if we keep on going like this, which is pretty exciting. And if you guys need to know, just want to check out the slides, look at videos from all of our previous tech talks as well as this one, you can check out meetup.com/achieverstech for all of our slides and achievers.com/tech for all of our videos, as well as upcoming information for upcoming talks or previous talks. It's a great resource for all of the Achievers Tech needs. Great. So now just a little introduction for a man that may or may not need an introduction.
That's definitely true. May or may not need one.
He's a serial entrepreneur. He founded Eloqua and was a CEO there, and then later on founded Influitive. And he's really no better man to talk about creating $1 billion space, as he's kind of went on and created one, but he's done it many times. And he's doing a really great job at kind of creating great programs, great companies in the SaaS platform for marketing. So just a round of applause for Mark Organ.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, thanks. That's okay. All right, how we doing? We're gonna lift the energy level up a little bit in the house because it's late in the day, and let's go have some fun, right? So we're gonna talk about a few companies, all right? So think about Salesforce.com in web-based CRM, right? Or Tesla in electric high-end automobiles, or even Keurig in single capsule coffee, right? What do all these things have in common? Other than making everyone around them a lot of money, right? These are companies that literally have changed the world, right? So this is my passion. My passion is in creating new categories, not just great companies. And I want to tell you sort of my story and give you some hints on how to create your own category, if that's the way you're wired, through the stories of the companies that I built. Is that cool? Yeah. All right, there we go. All right, there we go. All right, so as my introduction said, I'm I've created a number of companies actually, and I've been involved in the category creation process, also as a consultant several times. Most well known for my work at Eloqua. Eloqua is the sort of original cloud-based marketing automation software company, what used to be in the demand generation automation. It doesn't really rhyme well, but that was the original category name. It is now a wholly owned subsidiary of Oracle Corporation, and sold for almost $1 billion when you include all of the earn-outs and all that stuff. After going public in 2012. So pretty amazing story. There is very much of an airbrushed history that you can read if you go and do some Google searches. I'm going to tell you the real version of it tonight, right? So you'll get a sense of just how messy the process is, and hopefully give you a little bit of the energy to go and build your own, because as a 25-year-old know-nothing, I was able to get that done. Now working on a new company I'm very excited about, which is Influitive. We are creating a category around advocate marketing. It is going to be huge. Okay? It's going to be a multi-billion-dollar category. We're going to talk a little bit about the inspiration for that and how it was born out of the Eloqua experience. But out of very humble beginnings came Eloqua. So you're going to stare at this and go, what is this here on the screen? And I'll tell you, that is the original product of Eloqua. But the idea of Eloqua was to generate highly qualified leads for sales reps using the internet. Okay, that was the big idea. Okay? It started when I was a management consultant at Bain & Company. I did a lot of work for sales effectiveness cases. And what it is that I and my co-founders, Steve Woods and Abe Wagner, one of the things that we learned was that what was most important for sales rep effectiveness wasn't where they came from, wasn't their education, wasn't their attributes like product the way they thought it was. It was whether or not they got qualified leads or not, okay? And the offices of the companies we were studying that were performing the best were the ones that typically were breaking all the corporate rules and were generating qualified leads for sales reps. So the light went on, and we're like, okay, here's what we're going to do, right? We're just going to go and generate qualified leads for sales reps, and where they are increasingly is on this internet thing, right, back in '99. You know, web and email, and that's kind of where the action is. And so literally, we created a product that did that, like a personification of that. This is like a chat product. It's kind of a live person or OLARC on steroids, right? And so literally, we connected qualified prospects on the web to sales reps over the internet. This product was an utter flop. Okay, the first customer that we had, and we were lucky that we had a business-to-business company called Royal LePage Commercial, which is now a wholly owned division of Cushman & Wakefield, which is one of the largest commercial real estate brokerages in the world. We had very high-end, expensive sales reps that were using this product to chat over the internet. Needless to say, these people who made a lot of money were not that excited to chat with random people on internet sites. So what did we do? We built an email product to go and generate more traffic so that more reps could go and chat. And still it was a flop. But what was really interesting out of that was that the idea of tracking people, what they were doing on a website and attaching them by name, which is what we could do because we were integrated kind of a web tracking thing and an email tracking thing, because you need to track web activity if you want to do chatting. That turned out to be a bit of a hit, and that became kind of the initial product that we used to go and and generate some sales. So you guys might know Eloqua as a marketing automation company with all those fancy workflows and all that. This is actually how it started. It started as a chat product, and so you might recognize our minimum viable product, which came in 2004. I know there's different definitions of MVP. This is when we started to really get a lot of traction. Some of you who are in the marketing area may recognize this. This is a prototype of the original workflow-based program automation. So the idea here is that we slapped on a program automation thing, so instead of sending one email at a time, we could send multiple emails based on what people were doing on the website, and that actually became quite a hit. And the reason why this became a big deal was for the first time now you could nurture prospects and wait until they were sales ready, right, before getting them to a sales rep who could then go and talk to them. So you know what's interesting out of this, right, is the original mission stayed true, right? We were focused on sales rep productivity, right? But we ended up doing it through the marketing channel, and it was that original vision that sort of held us through some very difficult times from 2001 to 2004, which I'm not going to talk at length about today. All I can say is we were a bootstrapped company. We went through hell. We almost went bankrupt 4 times. It was really quite an amazing story, and maybe in the Q&A we can talk a little bit about that. But this is what happened in 2004. And then you will recognize this here as when Eloqua became a platform in 2007. Right? So in 2007, the product looks a lot better now, and it's a platform in a couple different ways. Number one, it became a way to run a number of processes that were going on in marketing. Again, still with the goal at the end of the day of maximizing sales productivity, even though it was a marketing tool. Okay, so we'll get back to that in a second. The other thing is the company started to build on top of Eloqua, and this is really its path to market dominance. It was also at this time when I left the company. It wasn't my idea. We could talk about that too. So this is really what the product became and when it became a platform. But through the success of this platform, which I call the burning platform, okay, became the seeds of the challenges of this market and where my idea came from for my new company, which is Influitive, right? So now lots of companies are able to email prospects, right? So what's going to happen? I mean, marketers will ruin just about anything if you let them, right? Every new channel, right? So you get list spoilage, you get attention spoilage, right? You get deliverability challenges. But I think the bigger issue is that there is a new disruptive innovation that appears on the scene, which is the social web, right? So now, prospects, right, buyers, can connect to knowledgeable peers very, very quickly, very cheaply, right, without risk, right? And so there's this availability there's a deep availability now of knowledge for buyers. So how excited are they really to go talk to salespeople and get bombarded with stuff from marketing, right? Not as excited. So, you know, here on the left is kind of the ideal buying experience I think we all want, right? We want to feel comfortable, like we're talking amongst friends and people who really care about us and have our best interests at heart. We want to be able to go and get you know, truly objective information about the kinds of things that we want to buy, right? But too often we get the experience more on the right, which is either hard sell, either virtually or from a salesperson. We get drowned in email, right? So this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense for the way that buyers want to purchase today. And as I said, it's just so much easier now for buyers to connect to knowledgeable peers, right? So they certainly don't need a telegram anymore, and even you don't even talk to anyone on a phone, right? So you start seeing stuff on the right. I mean, connecting to people on LinkedIn. I mean, think about it. Last time you went to go and buy something risky or expensive, right? What did you do, right? What was your experience like? My guess is you probably reached out to someone that you knew, right, on LinkedIn, or maybe you did a search on Stack Overflow or Quora or a site like that. One trend I think is really interesting is what you see in the bottom right. So First Round, which is a venture capital company, now has a network where I can connect instantly to any number of my peers and ask questions about candidates, about vendors, about other VCs, right? And I get answers instantly from my peers. Like, that's the environment that we're in now. So the dependence on knowledgeable peers has increased a lot, right? So now as buyers, this is what they are completely dependent on that. And I think the time has come for a product that takes advantage of it. I'm not going to talk about it. You can go on our website and you can take a look at what I think the future of marketing is, right, and what the next big marketing category is. But what we're doing now is that we are helping companies mobilize their army of customer advocates, right, to help out with referrals and reviews and case studies and social buzz and all that kind of stuff, right, which we think is going to generate a lot more sales in this new environment, right, than what I built before. So anyway, check it out. Let me know what you think. But I'm going to talk about now about what it means to go and create a category. Because I've been talking a lot about category creation and talk about some of the value of creating a category. So here are some category creating companies, right, that you may recognize. Let's talk a little bit on the B2C side before going to B2B, which is really my specialty, is around the business to business. Right, so think about Starbucks coffee and what the trend they took advantage of. Right? The decline of the church, the decline of the country club. People need a third place to go. Right? So Starbucks provided a consistent experience for people for a third place, outside of work and outside of home. Keurig did some similar things, right? Think about the coffee experience before they came along, the office coffee experience, right? Pretty lousy, coffee a mess all over the place. They replaced it with a single shot, having a consistent experience, a transformational experience, right, every single time. On the B2B side, I mean, Salesforce.com, a great company that essentially I kind of grew up with at Eloqua. We were founded almost around the same time, right? The experience of trying to get CRM implemented in your company, or maybe even SFA, which is what they were, Salesforce Automation, before they became CRM. That process in 2000 to 2000X was unbelievably painful. Right? You need stacks of boxes from Microsoft or Oracle or whatnot that invariably never worked together. It would take forever to implement. It would be extremely expensive. Right? That process, like both the implementation process and the buying process, was absolutely horrendous. Okay? So Salesforce.com totally transformed it, and literally within a few minutes, you could buy it, you could sign up, you could configure it, make it available to your team. Right? Total transformational experience that they were able to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Salesforce and another great company, Tesla, on this. And again, I know a bit about this because we were the first company at Eloqua to partner with Salesforce back in 2000 when we had 6 people and they had 40. So I've really had a chance to see that whole company team grow up. And in the early days, it wasn't totally clear they were going to dominate. You saw a very, very high growth rate, and they were starting to really eclipse their smaller competitors, which probably nobody here knows anymore, Upshot and SalesNet. They were big. One day, they were big. But, and you looked at all the other players, and it's no wonder that Tom Siebel said, this is a toy, right? This is not a serious piece of business software, right? But when you look at the growth rate, it might give you a tip that there's something interesting going on there. You look at it today, right, and Salesforce.com has actually eclipsed all of its old platform competitors. Right? If you look at their relative market shares, what we're showing on the bottom, I should explain that. So what we're looking at, previously, the axis along the bottom is its market share relative to the #1 player in the space. That's a relative market share. It's a great indicator of category dominance if you've got a very high RMS. Right? So again, very, very low RMS, extremely high growth rate. We come in here to 2011, 2012, and they are the clear market leader and also still growing quite quickly. Now Tesla is kind of more interesting because we're watching this category develop right in front of our eyes, right? Salesforce.com was 10 years ago. Tesla's really exciting, right? Does anybody know what category they're actually competing in? Yeah?
The electric vehicle credit market in California.
The credit market.
They get $35,000 per vehicle sold in terms of CARB and other electric credits.
It's cool. I actually didn't know about the credits. It's interesting. Yeah, that's the way I think of it. I mean, so I'm not sure the credits is a market. Maybe I got to think about that. But I think of it as they are creating a category around premium all electric vehicles, so not hybrids, but and so we're looking at when we look at them versus the other luxury vehicle vendors, they don't look all that interesting, right? But look what happens when you compare them against other I guess product lines of its class. Right? They're already got a leading market share, and as you mentioned, as California, you go to some zip codes in California, and it's like 50% Tesla. Go to Sand Hill Road. It's pretty amazing what you'll see there, right? And the rewards are there for Tesla. The market is starting to recognize the value of creating that category and being the clear market leader. And I think what the market is betting on here, right, is that the whole market will start to look like the Tesla market in the next few years, right? But Tesla's got such a jump on it. So there's very, very clear rewards for you to consider not just building a great company, but think about the whole industry and ecosystem, right? And I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you some tips and tricks, but the rewards are definitely there if you're able to do it, and I've got some really interesting data coming up to shed more light on that. So here's my definition of a category. Okay, for a distinct segment of the market, providing a transformational experience, a revolutionary business model, all undergirded by disruptive technology. I'm going to go through some specific examples, so don't worry about it, and you also have access to the deck later. Right, so I think these are really the elements that are critical. Let's first go through Salesforce.com. We talked about this a bit already. Right, so what was its segment when it was getting started? Right, it wasn't all companies. Right, most companies thought of Salesforce.com as a joke. And if you saw the original product, I mean, it's like the ugliest web product software product you've ever seen. Right, but yet they still did really well, and it's because they did a good job of choosing its segment properly. Right. Hey, Vic. Good. So these are high-growth, cash-strapped, B2B companies that are largely in the Bay Area. Right? So these were companies that had tremendous need to grow. They didn't have a lot of money sitting around, and so they needed a solution that was good enough. Right? So that was the transformational experience, was a good enough product, but that could be acquired very quickly and implemented very quickly. Right? That was actually the key thing that this segment needed. In terms of what its revolutionary business model, you know why I've got a Venus TriTap on here? It's a pretty revolutionary business model for a plant, don't you think? But again, monthly subscription by user, so you don't need huge upfront payments, continuous deployment of all upgrades, which is a big deal that I think has been underplayed in terms of being able to continuously deploy these things, right? And the disruptive technology behind all this is cloud or internet delivered software, right? So I think that the category isn't so much cloud or internet delivered software. That's the vehicle, right? That's the vehicle that you leverage in order to build your new category. So you might want to think about some of the big trends that are going on right now in big data and in mobile and in social and in local and in 3D printing and in robots. And I mean, there's lots of really exciting things happening right now. These are all amazing platforms that you can go and build a new category around. Right? Let's think about some of the other things. So Tesla, what was its segment? Okay, so again, Tesla doesn't target everybody. You know, to go and spend $120,000 on all-electric car when there's no places to charge it is kind of nuts, right? But there's some people that were very green conscious and technophiles, and so you get a lot of these people in Silicon Valley, venture capitalists and founders like me and this sort of thing, you know, that bought into it. All-electric cars, but have very similar performance characteristics of some of the highest-end luxury cars in the world. That's a pretty big deal. A lot of people think about, you know, the battery as the big innovation at Tesla, and for sure it is. But there's a lot of really interesting things going on at Tesla. Revolutionary buying experience. Okay, you want to see a great buying experience? Just go through the process at any Tesla dealership. It is like no experience that you've ever had with respect to buying cars. You know, they consider themselves a software company, and you really see that, a cloud software company, right? So the innovations that they're riding is not just, you know, incredible innovation in lithium-ion battery, you know, science, but also around cloud computing as well. Let's take a look at Eloqua, right? So at Eloqua, and I can speak from a little more experience on this one, we focused a very distinct segment of people that were just like the anarchists in the marketing community. Okay, so we'd even go places where they'd have like pirate flags over their door. These were process and lead gen oriented B2B marketers. You'd see big signs saying no taglines here. Okay, we're not the people who make fancy colors, right, and make the logos look nice. We are the process and lead gen oriented people. Now you see those folks everywhere today. In fact, you find them in the CMO chair a lot. They're one of the things that I'm really proud of that I think helped make that happen. But at the time, these guys were completely counterculture. But those are the folks that we really focused on and giving them a solution. The solution was to automatically nurture prospects guided by their behavior. Similar kinds of things going on in Salesforce, monthly subscriptions, you know, by users, and using cloud-delivered software as our disruptive innovation. Another one that may not be immediately apparent was major innovations in the ability of executives to screen out phone calls. Okay, so when it made it all of a sudden imperative, how are you going to reach these people if you can't reach these folks on the phone very easily because of call display and all that sorts of things, right? So that was actually sort of ubiquitous call display was in fact an innovation that we surfed. And then finally, Influitive, right? So we're focused on advocate marketers. How many advocate marketers do you know? None, right? But 5 years, there'll be lots. I guarantee you there'll be lots. And it has to, they have to. It's going to happen. And the reason why, right, is because the way the buying process has changed so much. So this is what I'm betting on, right? I'm betting on advocate marketers and the advocates they serve. And you can too. I'm inviting all of you to compete with me today, okay? Because I cannot create a category with just me in it. That doesn't count, okay? So come on. Give me your best shot. Okay, so what we're doing is an advocate-centered, comprehensive, self-service experience, right? It's different from everyone else. And you know, we're leveraging a new disruptive innovation around a pervasive social web. It's so fast, easy, and risk-free for buyers to connect to a knowledgeable peer, right? That's a big deal. You can build lots of different categories on that alone. This right here at the bottom. All right, that makes sense? All right, so this is really important. Missionary versus mercenary. So if you want to build a category, your primary goal, okay, is not to evangelize your company. Your primary goal is to evangelize your category. And that's hard, right? And that's probably the hardest thing about creating a category is that your marketing resources are actually diluted quite a bit. It's hard enough to build a startup, you know, never mind building, you know, what is the space around it, right? But you know, the key is to have zeal, not just about the mission, but the overall, what it is your category is trying to do. So I mentioned a little bit about competitors. The other thing about category creators is that they have messianic zeal about what it is that they're doing. Right? I'm pretty pumped up, right, about what I'm doing. It's actually quite natural. I'm really, really excited about it. You can tell? Right. So that's attractive to new customers and employees, and again, you know, hopefully competitors. Some of you in this room. A niche of one is not compelling. Whereas you look at your typical companies are a little more sort of mercenary oriented, right? They're looking, they're more folk, and that's fine. Like so, every category has its fast followers. We did at Eloqua. We will at Influitive as well. But if you want to be the category creator and you want to try to get the #1 position in that category, which I will say is very worthwhile for you, is very remunerative, as I've shown you before, and we'll show you again, to really hire people who have that zeal about them, who are excited about the category that you're creating, right? Attract investors that are excited about it. And most importantly, attract customers who like it, right? Because your customers actually do a lot of the work for you. Right? All right, so here's the payoff. Is that there is a massive valuation premium if you are, in fact, successful at creating this category. Right? In creating this category, what you'll see here is that category creators grow revenue 4 times faster and market cap 6 times faster than new market entrants. Right? Nothing wrong with being a market entrant. There are a number of companies who actually create significant value that way. Right? But if you're able to do this, right, you're able to actually generate a lot more value for yourselves and for your shareholders. All right. So changing gears right now, and how'd that feel, by the way? Is that kind of making sense? I know I went through it a little fast. But I'm going to talk about some of the things that were similar between my last company that started Eloqua and this one, Influitive, and some of the things that were different. So I think it's kind of cool to say, well, what did I learn from the experience that I had, and what am I doing differently? Okay, so on the left-hand side, these are all things that are the same. We're going to talk about them, and then we're going to talk about what's different. All right, so it's the same. So this part is pretty similar. So use a hypothesis-driven iterative approach to quickly find product market fit. Now that is all kind of common sense. Now we all know lean startup and all that kind of stuff. So we didn't have this when I was starting my last company. And so my background was as a research scientist and as a management consultant at Bain. And actually both of those had a pretty common approach towards hypothesis testing and 80-20, right? Trying to figure out what is the 20% that drove 80% of the value. So I think this is probably the most important thing in here if you want to go and build really a category, even a great company, is to pick a niche you want to serve, right? Document why and test it, right? So I think sometimes we see some of these companies that look like they're so broad and we don't really remember that at one point they started super narrow. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. But you start out with a hypothesis. At Eloqua, we had a hypothesis around, if we generate qualified leads for sales reps over the internet, then that's something that is going to be desirable to these certain kinds of companies, to finance, insurance, and real estate companies. That didn't work very well. I'll talk about that in a second. But the goal is to use this process of hypothesis testing as a way to continuously refine your model of the world. Right? So you have a model of the way you think the world works, constantly testing and iterating on that, and typically a narrower niche is actually better. Again, it is completely okay if your hypothesis is wrong. Right? In fact, it will be wrong. I guarantee it. Right? Or at least some aspects of it will be wrong. But if you've documented those assumptions that you've made, right, you can at least see why it went wrong and you can be able to pivot. So we made some pretty massive pivots at Eloqua, right? I mean, you saw one on the product side. Right? We started with a kind of glorified chat tool, and we ended up with this like email web marketing automation thing. Well, how did we do that? Right? Well, it's because we had a hypothesis that we had a hypothesis that sales reps would actually enjoy chatting with people on the website, and we found that wasn't true. And we understood why that wasn't true. But what was interesting is that there were some segments where it was true. Right? I'm going to go through it in just a bit. So you want to write out your hypothesis. You want to write out those assumptions that you make, and then you know where it goes wrong. So, right. Okay. So again, you will make mistakes. That's okay, right? So in the early days of building a company, I think the CEO is kind of like the chief experimental officer, right? I don't think there's really anybody else in your company typically that's going to be better able than the CEO to be able to continually try out different ideas. So we used to get together every week. When I was at Eloqua, we had a small team of 6 people. Okay, what did we learn today? Especially about the customers. Like, what did we learn about the market? And so here's a great example. So I talked a little bit about some of the product pivot that we made from chat to marketing automation. But we made a really big pivot on the market segment as well. Right? So when I was at Bain, I did a lot of work in financial services, and that's where I saw the need for this, this product that I built. So I said, well, let's target the same segment, finance, insurance, and real estate, and there's lots of them in Toronto. So that's a great segment to target, right? And that what I quickly learned was that finance and insurance companies, even though they professed a lot of interest for the product that I had, didn't buy for one reason or another. Usually it was some security guy or the IT guy or someone got in the way of it. But there were some real estate companies that bought. That was really interesting, right? So I thought these all go together. FIRE, this cool acronym, right? F-I-R-E, it goes well together. So what went on there, right? And what was going on was that real estate companies spent a lot of money to go and build a building or to promise Wall Street they were going to go build a building or whatnot. And they had a need to aggressively pre-sell, a lot of those the properties, right? And so I said, that's really interesting. And that seems to be what is driving this different behavior than what we're seeing in finance insurance, right? In real estate companies, at board of directors meetings, they talk about lead generation. And they talk about these things in sales and marketing that they don't talk on finance insurance. So then we said, well, where can we find companies that have the same economics but even more extreme? I'm like, that's a hard one. Then we looked in the mirror and like, oh, that's us. We have those same economics in a much greater extent. Software companies don't build a building, but you build all this intellectual property and it wastes away way faster than the building, right? Within 5 years, it's pretty much obsolete. So we started to target B2B technology companies, and we found a much more fertile ground for our ideas, right? Where they didn't just say they wanted the product, but they were much more willing to act on it and act on it quickly. All right. So 2, vertical niche market dominance. One of my favorite topics. So the narrower the better, and this is really counterintuitive for a lot of entrepreneurs. And the less money you raise, the more important it is to be really, really narrow. Okay, so if we look at some of the most horizontal companies in the world, right? So Salesforce.com, they serve almost every industry on earth. They're in B2C, they're in B2B, they're everywhere. That's not how they started, right? They started with cash-strapped, venture-backed companies in the Bay Area, and they rolled out of there. So Facebook, similar kind of story, right? I mean, those of you probably have seen the social network or know the story, right? The idea wasn't to go and dominate the world. The idea was to go dominate Harvard, right? And then from Harvard to go to other elite universities, and then other Boston universities and other elite universities, and they kind of rolled out from there. So even the most horizontal companies actually started with a niche and kind of rolled out of there into overall overall market dominance. Right? So you should, if you're building a company and you aspire to create a category, you should be like this anteater over here, right? Highly adapted to your environment. And do you know why it's really important to be highly adapted to your environment? Do you know what the #1 job of an entrepreneur is?
Business.
What's that?
Stay in business.
That's pretty good. Any other ideas? That's right. Not to die. It's your first job, is not to die. Right? So focus lets you do a lot of really interesting things. Now, in our case at Eloqua, we were a bootstrapped company. I raised $166,000, and I got profitable on that. And it's because we have a choice. We went to see every VC in town, and nobody would give me any money. I was a 25-year-old know-nothing guy, and I was the oldest, most experienced person in the company. Focus lets you do a lot of things. I mean, first of all, if all of your customers look kind of the same, it allows you to economize, especially on your product roadmap, right? Every customer asks for the same features, which is great. It also helps you economize on your marketing, right? So that you don't have to create lots of marketing materials, you create one set of marketing materials. Your sales reps don't have to learn new language all the time, and they can appear like experts, right? The other thing that's really important, the more you focus, right, you can start to charge for your expertise. You can start to raise your prices. So if you're considering building a company and you don't want to deal with those VC bastards, right? Say that. Because they are, it's their job, right? Or you want to be independent, or you can't raise money or whatever, then this is the route for you. You focus a lot more, you charge them prices, you charge people for their own needs analysis, and all kinds of other things, and people are willing to pay it. Why? Right? Because you're an expert. You're an expert in your field. So, we don't just focus on B2B software companies. We don't just focus on B2B application software companies, right? At one point at Eloqua, it was, we are the world's experts in open source software company marketing, right? And we got literally 100% market share. Every single open source software company over $5 million in revenue, including Red Hat. And we were all Microsoft. We went to the Cathedral of Open Source and we won them. At all Microsoft stack. They had to go and buy a bunch of PC machines, right, to go use our stuff. It was absolutely crazy. But that's what Focus does, right? Anyway. All right, so focus innovation on the emerging underserved hero. This is really fun. This is some insight that I got, from being a consultant, right? In that even if you sell to businesses, businesses are made up of people. And those people have their own desires and needs. And hopefully those jibe with company needs. And the further you get away from sort of startup, the less I think you get a consonance between people's individual desires and the company desires. Like government's the worst, I think, for that. Right? But the innovation you want to focus on, ideally, is on what I call the underserved hero, right? And every company has them. And this is the keys. I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, all right, I want to build a huge company. I don't want to be an anteater company. I want to be a big elephant. How do I do that? So the key is to focus on this guy, right? This guy. So disruptive technology creates winners and it creates losers. Okay? The CIO is a loser. You don't want to bet on that guy. He's going down, right? Why? It's because information technology is everywhere. Why do you need some person standing in between, the technology, innovation, and people? Doesn't make sense, right? So we're betting on the advocate marketer. Why? Because we think disruptive innovation is going to create a whole new category of marketing and marketing people, right? That are experts in mobilizing the masses of advocates to go and do their job for them. We're going to bet on that person. And right now that person is a minority, is a tiny, tiny minority. But we think it's going to be a lot bigger. Right? And so you elevate and celebrate these people. We did the same thing, at Eloqua with demand gen people. Again, these people were the subculture. They were the pirates, right? The marketers that were in control, the CMOs, actually, they weren't even CMOs back then. The SVPs of marketing now, everything's a chief now, right? But SVP of marketing's back then. Those were the people that, knew how to work the analyst relationships and they picked the Pantone colors and logo and all this kind of stuff. Right? But we focused on these people that were the antithesis of it. Right? And we knew we'd go to their offices and we'd see their funnels on the wall. Right? And we knew that those were the people that we went to serve. Right? And so we created like awards for them and all kinds of things to go and really elevate and celebrate these people. Right? So a lot of people think, that category creators come from the marketing department. Let's go and create an alphabet soup, right? CRM, hey, look at that. Or SRM, or PGP, or I don't know. Like, you're going to create a new one. But you know what? A lot of them don't take off. And you know why? It's because they're created by marketers who are not really in touch with these people, right? So if you want to go and if you want to figure out what to name your segment, they'll tell you. You go and find the Underserved Hero, and they'll tell you exactly what your segment should be called. Hey, does that make sense? Hey, this is big. All right. Okay, other things that are similar between two companies is drive the company on mission, vision, and values from day one. So literally, before we even incorporated the company, before we put any money in the company at Eloqua, we sat together to figure out what are the values of the company, what kind of people do we want to work with, right? What should the mission, kind of vision that we want to go and accomplish? And it's amazing how true that stayed 13 years later. The product changed, the market changed, the CEO got shot in the head. I mean, everything changed. But you know what? Remarkable how much the vision, mission, and values stayed true. Right? So that's one thing I'd encourage you if you're building a company or considering that, is that don't scrimp on this. Right? Is that you do get it done and you make it an open, evolving process and you really let in your employees in to go and change these every few months. Right? And let it be a living document. Right? Think about Salesforce.com with its no software. Right? Like think about how Salesforce started as an SFA tool and then became CRM and then became a community and then a platform and then holy cow, how'd they do that? Right? It's because they're guided by this. Right? And they were guided by this from day one. Mark Benioff's goal was not to create the world's greatest customer relationship management tool. Right? It was to build no software. And they accomplished that. Same thing with Google. How does a company like Google get into self-driving cars, right? And Google Earth and all this kind of stuff? What guides them? It's this, right? So I'd say that this is really the area you want to focus a lot of attention on, as particularly if you're CEO. Okay, drive leads to achieve profitable, efficient growth. Okay, going from the super in the cloud strategic all the way down to tactical. Okay, so I think lead generation is absolutely a strategic imperative, and I think a lot of CEOs don't focus enough on it. And so I think it's important not just because, hey, generating leads is good because it generates revenue, but more importantly, why the CEO has to get involved and why you can't outsource it to a bunch of people cold calling on the phone, right, is because startups win because they get to choose their customers, right? You get to choose the way that you want to compete, right? There's nothing more strategic than that. Like, how do startups keep winning over and over again against huge companies with all these resources? I think this is why, right? I think this is why. It's not much about innovation. It's about being able to choose who your customers are, right? So I don't think it's something you want to delegate. Right, just said that. Okay, and I think so once you figure out as CEO or founding, head of sales or marketing, what a great target customer looks like, and you want a couple, then I think you want to ensure that the lead flow is continuing to increase in quality and quantity. I think all is good in the world, okay? If your quality and quantity of leads are going up every month, you will win. I'm not kidding, you will win. Don't worry that much about the close rate. Someone will figure out how to close it, right? Board member or some executive or whatnot, right? But if the leads are going up and it's going up because people are really jiving with what it is you're doing, they like what you're, they like the big idea of what it is that you're selling, right? All is good in the world. So I focus a lot more of my attention on the top of the funnel, not on the bottom of the funnel. That's different, I think, from a lot of CEOs, but it works for me anyway. All right, season marketing mix of seeds, nets, and spears. So again, I'm really into lead generation. I think it's really important. You've probably heard some stuff around inbound and inbound marketing, outbound. I think that the key to success is getting this mix really working well, right? So inbound marketing is important, creating content. This is important for, you want to, again, create missionaries, not mercenaries. Right? So missionaries are attracted to the why. Right? Why do you exist? What's your passion? So you need to go and create real thought leadership to go and attract those people. Saying I have is open minds or open wallets. Right? It's very hard to sell anything to someone who doesn't have their mind open by your ideas first. Ideas compete just like products do. Right? Outbound, you got to do it. So I think there's kind of a popular train of thought that, look, all we got to do is just write good content, and then Google's going to send all the best opportunities to us. I think that's baloney, right? And particularly if you're creating a category, because if all you do is put your net out there, what are you catching? Some good stuff, but a lot of crap, right? So you need to be able to throw your spear at the right prospects, not literally throw the spear, but you know what I mean. You want to be able to target the right people. And the third, again, really important if creating a category, is you need to create that advocate word of mouth, right? There's some people who think that you can't actually create more of that word of mouth. You just, try to do a great job on product and service, and it just comes. I don't think that's true. I think you can drive it. I think if you actually measure how many referrals that you're getting all the time, and put a real focus on it, then you'll actually get a lot more of it, right? What you measure gets, what you manage gets measured, and measure gets managed. You know what I mean. All right, invest early in customer success. Another thing I think is really important. So, my mentor, I had many mentors at Eloqua, but sort of the mentor that helped me get to be a profitable company and tell the VCs to go to hell, said that, this is to say, build happy customers, they scale really well, right? So a lot of VCs will tell you that you got to really build for scale, right? You got to make sure everything is all repeatable. We should all build freemium models. And look, I got a lot of respect for freemium models, and I think there's some wisdom in there. But there's nothing that scales better than happy customers, right? So for me, the customer success department was always the cornerstone of the company, right? It's where I put my strongest people, is in customer success, managing the customer relationship, and generating measurable value fast. Right? Fast. If you make money, you ring the cash register for the customer within the first 2 or 3 weeks after implementation, you will have a raving fan for life, and they will help you get a lot more customers cheap. Right? And if you're building a bootstrap companies, that's what you got to do. You got to win customers, and you got to win them cheap. Right? So build happy customers. They scale really well. Don't be afraid. Again, particularly if you're, and the more bootstrapped you are, the more this is actually a priority. All right, so yeah, a little bit about marketing. So I get a similar vein there. If you got $1 to spend on marketing, really seriously consider spending 75 cents of it on customer success. It's more true than ever before, right? And it's because of what's going on in the buying process. It's so easy for happy customers and unhappy customers to get the word out, right? So I really encourage you to invest a lot in happy customers, invest in your advocates, really get mobilizing. All right, so let's talk about some of the things that are different. This part's really fun. How are we doing on time?
Good.
Awesome.
We can take all night.
All right, I'm not boring you?
No.
Cool. All right. So iterated MVPs are not sufficient. Okay, so I think that one of the biggest differences in the way that I look at companies now is around the importance of customer experience and quality. Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing more and more too. I mean, think about some of the iconic consumer companies of our time, right? Think about Uber as an example, or think about Kiwi Crate or Birchbox or Trunk Club, or that's on the consumer side. But they are designing end-to-end the ideal consumer experience. I think that's the future, right? Both on the B2B side, on the B2C side, and I also think that quality is something that has become more and more important. So at Eloqua, it was really a lot about get something out there, learn, test, iterate, and that was enough. And that's not enough anymore, right? And I think the trick now is you got to figure out how to integrate design up front in with your iterative process. And that's a tough trick, and we're still learning how to do it. But I think the key thing is you got to test your designs, okay? And you've got to test your product. You've got to make it all work. And I think the thing you really want to optimize around is around the experience, right? So what you're testing around is, am I designing a better and better experience for my users and your customers? At Eloqua, I think our first QA hire was when we hit like 60 or 70 people. And then we had our first product manager. We had like 100 people. I don't think we ever had any designers ever. Okay, so here QA was dev hire number 5. And we hired an amazing person who's really committed to automated testing. We have test-driven development. If you guys aren't doing that, you got to look it up. It's really important. Expand your productization and monetization models. Okay, this is speaking really specifically about SaaS companies here, but I'll try to stretch it for those of you who are doing consumer stuff. I think the days of being able to taking like some under-automated business process and automating it and charging a high amount of per dollar per user or per user per month kind of thing, those days are over. Okay, like there's no way you're going to get away with that. Even if you find some niche that you can automate, if that's your model, you're just going to get crushed by the freeware that's going to come once you hit 3 or 4 million in sales. It'll be over. You got to think more intelligently than that, right? And I think one of the big opportunities that is just starting to get scratched now is where people are taking advantage of all the data that they're getting, right? So think about Salesforce.com. They don't take advantage of the data, right? They just sell an implementation to every company. But all of that best practices data and benchmarking and all that kind of stuff, they're not taking advantage of that, right? It's because they're not architected for it, so they can't do it, right? And likely somebody, what's probably going to kill them is going to be like a big data-oriented, mobile-oriented CRM company, right? That'll give away the core stuff for free and say, here's what we're going to sell you. We're going to tell your sales reps what to do next. We're going to tell them who to call. We're going to benchmark your sales managers against every other sales manager. We're going to charge you a lot for that, right? But the core stuff, we're going to give that away for free. I'm just telling, so pay attention, because this is the business model that can make some of you a lot of money, right? So here's what we're doing about it, right? We've got this really cool mobile app we call Maven. You can download it. You can use it to advocate for any company you want. Even though we sell advocate hubs to each company for them to mobilize their advocates, we built a consumer app for advocates that we can pool together all the advocates together in kind of one app and eventually sell access to them, right? So not sure if this is going to work or not, but we're going to keep taking stabs at it because you can't just charge high per user per month. You've got to find other more sophisticated ways of monetizing the user. Think about LinkedIn. They've done a great job of that, right? LinkedIn, essentially has multiple streams of revenue. They take advantage of, repeatable software, MRR models. as well as having a great network at its core. All right, so build for the billion. So Influitive is designed to be a billion-dollar company, billion or bust. So a couple of those things. Yeah, I love that guy. So more long-term focus. So I did, go and raise money sooner. I really want to take a crack at building something big and great. Eloqua, we did have some big dreams, but also mainly we were focused on surviving another quarter. So a little bit different in focus. So raising money sooner. I really love some of these new disruptive fundraising platforms out there, like AngelList, which is itself a category creator, interestingly. So I think the future of financing is going to be about more shareholders, right? More angels, more micro VCs, more people helping. Let's build an army of people who can help us. Right? And so I think these new disruptive platforms are better able to do that. So we have 44 shareholders in our company, and that means that I can connect to pretty much any executive that I want in the Valley. Like someone who owns a piece of my company can connect me. Right? So some of the things to think about is really try to spread the net a little wider when you raise money. At least that's what we did. More ambitious products. So I mentioned a little bit about our mobile app. We've also gone and embedded our software inside our customers' software, right? So trying to build network effects and getting ready for the deluge of cheap competition that invariably comes in every market. It will come to, it will happen to us, right? In 3 years, there will be people who build everything we do today and give it away for free, right? We're making sure we're getting ready for that. Hire a stronger executive team early. So, a lot of people talk about, build a great team, build the A team. What does that really mean? I do think that it's never been a mistake to go hire the best possible people that you can, even if they're expensive, as long as they're experienced in the stage. So if there's one place where I've seen entrepreneurs consistently go wrong, where I've made mistakes, is by hiring the, some really fancy head of sales, head of marketing, whatever, from big firm, right? But they don't have experience in the stage, right? They don't have experience selling, technology that's around at your price point. It can make you go wrong. But it doesn't mean that you hire the most. Just because you hire a strong team doesn't mean you hire people who've been there and done that. I think it's the exact opposite. I really like to hire people that have for me, the ideal hire is always the person who has done every aspect of the job but has never had the job, right? So your head of marketing that's done demand gen, that's done events, that's done PR, that's done all this kind of stuff, but has never been a VP of marketing, to me that's my perfect hire, right? The person who's run sales ops, inside sales, field sales, channel sales, but has never had the top VP of sales job, that's my perfect hire. I think it's good when there's some room to grow, right? It keeps things interesting, right? And that's especially important in so category creator companies. They attract those folks that are, right, missionary. Well, missionary people also love to learn and grow, right? And that's what attracts them to your company. So try to find those folks that can't necessarily do the job in their sleep. The people who do their job in their sleep, they're good for the advisory board, right, or the board of directors. That's it. So thanks. Here to take questions now.
Like 10 minutes for Q&A.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Sure, Keith.
You mentioned that you're going to have you're preparing now for cheap competition.
Yeah.
It's going to give it away at a much lower price. How do you prepare for that?
That's a good question.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. So the question was, how do you get prepared for having lots and lots of cheap or free competition in 3 years, because that is invariably what's going to happen if you create a category. And it's true. I mean, it kind of sucks to do all this work to create a category to then have it get stolen from you. And in fact, that is what happened at Eloqua. And it happened because the board fired me and replaced me with a rent-a CEO who wasn't as competitive as I am, right? So let Marketo into the market. So we used to do an exercise with our team actually every year at our strategic offsite was, this time next year, XYZ companies coming into our space, they're giving it away for free, what do we build, right? So we get the whole team really thinking about what it is that we have to build in order to withstand that competition. And so I think it comes to a lot of the things that we talk about here, like the underserved hero. What does the underserved hero need, right? In our case now in Influitive, it's both the advocates and the advocate managers. So we are building a moat around the advocate experience that is a mile wide and deep. So any of you guys who want to compete with me, good luck, because you're never getting in there, right? And it's because I think that as long as we have the best possible advocate experience, right, it is very, very difficult for others to come in. So we really focus on that. Think about like the Isthmus of Panama. It's a strategic place. Or think about Singapore, where it is, right? Or a high ground, right? It's one place that actually commands a lot of real estate around it. So you want to think about your market and like, what is that high point, or what is that isthmus, or what are those straits, right? Where if you own it and dominate it, right, that you actually control a wide swath of space around it. At Eloqua, what it was that once we were tracking web activity in forms, and I know you like forms, right? Well, the thing about forms is that they're a pain in the ass to go and switch, right? So once we owned that and we're tracking all this web activity, I mean, companies were loath to want to go and switch. And so that we could sell all kinds of things on top of that, and it was a very defensible thing, right? So that's kind of the way I think about it. Yes, sir.
Can you speak about what happened with Word?
With Word?
With the board.
Oh, with the board. We had some different ideas about which way the company should go. I was very aggressively expanding. I wanted to raise a lot more money. I wanted to grow internationally faster. This was in 2006, 2007, when the economy was still a bit shaky. So I think I freaked the board out a bit. I'm not exactly the image of a polished professional. So I think as a 32-year-old in a hot market, right? And, that's one thing that's really interesting. Just thinking about sort of CEOs and tenure, and like, if you're kind of in the mushy middle, you're actually pretty safe, CEO, right? So if your company's like sort of puttering along, growing 20, 25% a year, which actually in software is crappy, you're probably pretty safe, because if they take you out as CEO, then there's a good chance the company goes to hell. I mean, if you're growing 100% a year in a really exciting market, then all of a sudden it's, wow, we've got a really young management team and they might completely screw this up. I think it's a little more in vogue now to have, I think Zuckerberg and folks have got VCs in particular to see the value of founders, right? Founders have passion. They attract people. I mean, there's a lot of good things about founders, as long as they're able to learn and grow. So I think that's part of it. I made some mistakes. I made some political mistakes that I regret, and I could have done things better. But I think also there was a difference of opinion in terms of how to grow the company. Ultimately, it worked out pretty well. Yes, sir.
You mentioned how you had some small, like low six-figure seed investment, and then from there you scaled it, grew the business organically before you raised some more like sort of VC funding. But where were you in terms of product development when you raised that initial seed round?
Oh, we had a prototype. That's it. So now a prototype in 2000 carries more weight than one today. It was pretty hard to build a prototype in 2000. It was a big deal. Now, I mean, it's a lot easier. So I think the equivalent today might be, happy users, maybe a little revenue, something like that. It's just so much cheaper and frankly easier to get a prototype hacked up. That's kind of where we were then. Yes, sir, in the back.
Could you speak more about the process of being the factor?
Sure.
Kind of who will get the answers, the Underserved Hero, but what did the actual process look like from ongoing?
Okay. How do I answer this properly? Well, I mean, we're going through right now, so I can tell you. I mean, I can tell you kind of just here's how we did it. So I was passionate about advocacy, and I have been for a while, and it's because I learned at Eloqua that advocates are what drove faster sales processes, not our own software, right? So I knew this is something that I wanted to work on, but I didn't know how to attack it. I knew that referrals are really valuable, but I also saw how references were a hair on fire thing, And you know, 2010, social media started getting really important, so I didn't know where to go. So what we did, me and my then co-founder, basically just went on a trip and just started to meet with lots of people in my target market, CMOs, VPs of marketing, this sort of thing, and we said, well, we're really passionate about advocacy, and we think that it can drive a lot of value, and what could we build for you that you might buy? And so we heard lots of different things, but one of the things that we heard consistently was that references were a real problem, and sales reps were complaining because in order to close a deal, they needed 3 references, and they could never find the references they needed, and they were losing deals, all kinds of stuff. Right? So we went and built that. That was a flop. Again, so like when you go through this process, it's really not linear. You're going to bounce around a lot. But then the question is, well, why was it a flop? We went and built it, and a bunch of people did use it. We got a little bit of value, but and it really didn't work because the experience wasn't great for the advocates. And that's when things really coalesced for us, when they're like, oh, right, that's what the key thing is if the advocates are happy and are productive, right, then they're going to do lots more activity. And so that's when we said, well, instead of just doing references, let's be much more broad about all the different things that advocates do, and let's center on those advocates. So that actually became kind of the underserved hero, were advocates in companies, and then the people who wanted to mobilize them. But between those two, advocates are actually on top for us. They are at the top of the pyramid. We serve them before we serve anyone else, which is interesting, right? Because we actually sell software to marketers, but we don't see them as top of the pyramid. We see the advocates on top of the pyramid. It does make it interesting. But okay, so we started doing that, and a lot of the customers and analysts and bloggers started to really talk about our product and what we did in terms of this complete advocacy solution, right? And so the category started to come together around a product that would really maximize advocate productivity. Today in our marketing, we spend a lot of time more evangelizing the category than we do talking about our company. So for example, we just had an award show, which is awesome. I love award shows, right? And you won't see Influitive really anywhere in there. You'll see it in really fine print. It's the BAMMYs. It's the Best Advocate Marketing Awards. I know, totally corny, right? But people just loved it, right? And we really wanted to focus on advocate marketing and on advocates, and that's part of the whole category creation process. We're evangelizing the space, not just our company. We're having a summit, coming up in a few months, right? It's Advocate World. It's not the Influitive conference, right? It's talking about, and we're inviting all our competitors in, all the different people from different places. It's a big tent. We want more people in. We get a lot more value by having a bigger pie than having a bigger piece of a really small pie, right? And that's the thinking that you kind of need if you want to build a category, is really the category comes first before your company does. Okay. Yes, sir.
So what drove you to make the strategic decision to take VC if you were bootstrapped and profitable?
It's a great question, and did not have fun with them the last time. Yes. So yeah, that's a good one. Well, yeah, because I really was thinking that, because I did make a little bit of money from Eloqua. I didn't make kind of screw you money out of it, and I could have funded it myself for quite a lot longer. But a number of things were going on. I mean, number one, I'm a salesman, and I'm used to collecting money, not dishing it out. So I was, forking over $50,000, $60,000 a month to fund payroll and other things. That didn't feel right to me. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is we saw a big opportunity, right? And I didn't really want to let it slip away. And if I had a choice whether to be rich or king, I'll pick rich. And more, I'd rather pick, let's make everyone else rich, than it is to be number one. So yeah, I'm ceding a little bit of, sharing a little sovereignty with these guys. I've been through it before. I know I made mistakes. I'm doing things better this time. I also have a pretty good reputation, which is funny considering I've been through, but I've got a decent reputation. I don't think the VCs are going to want to throw me out anytime soon. And part of it's because of our strategy. We're focused on a segment that I have a really unfair advantage in. I can go and see pretty much any executive I want in the B2B technology sector. So I think the board's going to think a few times before replacing me. Yes, sir.
How do you manage work-life balance
Yeah. You can see I don't look like Brad Pitt, so I don't manage it very well. It's funny. I manage it poorly. I'm working on it. And it's funny because it is one of the core values of our company, and I feel like I'm not living it right now, and it upsets me a lot. But I'm making some changes. I mean, the first thing I think is to really relentlessly prioritize. I prioritize my family and my business. I have two children, and so they really come first. That has come ahead of exercise and a bunch of other things that should be working on. But it's cool. Now that I'm building out a management team, I am getting a little bit more time, and I'm very close to hiring a head of sales, and when that happens, we good. So I've got a few things, like I'm playing piano again, and I'm working on a really hard piece, and I have started a new really cool diet and exercise regime from a venture-backed software company called Retrofit. It's really cool. I got a Fitbit, I got like a wireless scale, I got all kinds of stuff. I got a coach every week I talk to, so I'm trying. But it is hard. Like I thought it'd be a lot easier this time. Maybe that's one of the reasons I raised money too, is that at least I have some money to go and hire some folks. I have a chief of staff, which is awesome. It's kind of like a super EA. So imagine EA on steroids. It's awesome to have a chief of staff. Every company should have a chief of staff. So I have that in order to get some more stuff done. But I think that I think it's always a challenge. I think if you ask most entrepreneurs, you haven't got it right. I'd be surprised when most people say they got it. I wish I gave you a better answer. Yes, yeah. Oh, yes, sir, in the back.
Hey, yeah, it's just that I study neuroscience. So I
Cool.
You're advising how, coming from your experience in your career, how do you translate that sort of knowledge inside of neuroscience? How do you translate it when you go to the business world? It's kind of much more different, especially, I don't know, the world is different.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of insights to bring from the psychological and neurological world, but how can I imagine this?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I get asked that a lot. I think in every experience we have, there's something we can take from it to help us build our businesses better. There's a lot about the academic world that is kind of useless, frankly. It's a weird, I don't know if there's any academics here. It's a weird world, it really is. But there's some things that they do very, very well. Academics are amazing at choosing what ideas to work on. That is their survival. Because if you are working on something that someone else is working on, and you don't have original findings, and you don't publish, and it means you get fired, right? So there's a great process that I think you might be, you might have that when you meet with your supervisors and all the other grad students and whatever, great processes for choosing projects where there's white space. So that's one of the things that I took with me from the academic world. I also knew that I would never want to have the kind of horrendous politics that you find in academia. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to go into being a startup, is because I wanted to be in a meritocracy, and I felt like the academic world is not a meritocracy. In terms of specific things about neuroscience, sometimes I tell people I learned all this great stuff in neuroscience and I apply it, and some of that may be a little bit true, but it's a stretch. Let's face it, there's a lot of what we do in science that is of interest to like 12 people in the world. I mean, at least that's for me. And I even found some really cool stuff that I could talk about later, about some of the things I discovered. But, the supply and demand equation for research is just poor, right? There's just not a lot of demand for researchers, and you probably may end up getting stuck at like University of Oklahoma or something, away from the love of your life and earning $18,000 a year, and that's exactly where I was headed if I didn't make a right turn, and that's why I did. Is that I wanted to. What I liked about academia, which is great, was work with super smart people on exciting problems, right? On new problems. That was great. What I didn't like was making $18,000 a year and being maybe sent to somewhere in Mississippi in order to go and do a fourth postdoc. So I asked some smart people at university, what should I do with my life? And they said, go be a management consultant. And that was great advice. So I'm not sure if that's helpful at all, but I'm clearly not a super optimist about kind of research as a career. Anyway, thanks. Appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very, very much, Mark. That was awesome. All right, some last things. If you do want to work in a company that is growing a market, then Achievers is hiring. So, yes, thank you. So just come to achievers.com/careers. We're hiring from development to sales to customer experience. So everywhere at our company we're hiring, so talk to someone in a purple lanyard if you're interested. And now we'd just like to take a little time for if anyone has any general announcements that they'd like to just kind of introduce to the group. Perfect.
We're hiring too.
Influitive is hiring.
All right, developers, sales reps, you're good. We want to talk to you.
Great. And on to for our next talk, actually, our senior product designer, Bobby Bradford, is going to be toasting on how to not UX fail. So really just 7 design secrets that every dev should know. So it's really great to kind of just know when you're going in there developing something, what you shouldn't do for design purposes. I wish I knew that, because I've made a lot of mistakes. Great. Cool. So if you have anything you want to talk about in a talk that you want to host, or you just want to have any questions, reach out to us. You can email tech@achievers.com. We have a Facebook group, Twitter account, really anything. Just let us know what you guys have to say, and we're always there to listen. Great. So we're going to be available. Just sit around, network, have a few drinks. Mark might stick around for a little bit, ask some more questions, maybe about neuroscience, who knows. And yeah, thanks for coming, and have a great night, everyone.